Yeah.
I
That's
don't like the fact that it has. I think the claws are stupid. I think the claws are actually really, really, really stupid. And, like we were talking how this is very much like a cavalry unit.
mhm.
Like, oh, can you think of a shorter range weapon than your hands?
Well, this
Well,
thing is pretty big. It's
I,
large.
yeah, but you know what it can carry with its largeness? A huge fuck off mace.
Welcome to Monsters and Multiclass, your Dungeons and Dragons fix. I'm Ellie,
I'm Jared Bornagle.
I'm Wormelda.
and on this episode, we are taking a look at Armanites. They're demons. They're like Centaur demons. That's about it. End of episode.
No, that is just the
Yeah.
start of these things. Armanites are what we're going to be discussing. Before we get into that, I know we usually don't do like any personal life stuff, but I feel like with my background being as what it is today, I just wanted to point out I'm currently in the middle of a bathroom remodel. The office is right next to the bathroom, so there it is. I tried to cover it with plastic to make it look better. Not
Because
all
if
of us.
something looks nice and professional, it's translucent plastic.
Yes. Look, it's better than what was there. Yes. So Armanites, as Ellie mentioned, are demon centaurs, which I mean is a good way of putting it. They are most certainly demons. They've got hooves. They are centaurs. That's it. They're also very reminiscent of the. Well, I guess it might be the other way around, but of the creatures and animorphs that I cannot remember for the life of me. For some reason I felt like Will would, but they start with a Z.
I know what you're talking about, like the good aliens.
Yeah.
The ones that give them the powers. But those are like blue and friendly. These are demonic and mean.
Yes, visually speaking, is I guess what
Yeah.
I meant. Mainly because they had like the scythe tail or whatever they had going on, which
Right.
these definitely have. So these things are walking arsenals. That's in even the description of them. Their most fearsome weapon is the number of weapons they have at their disposal. Sharp hooves, claws that end in curling talons, and long serrated tails that can flense the flesh from a victim, and they use them all to carve through their foes. And these creatures are almost in a way war horses and used in demon wars or in the great war of the demons versus devils as cavalry and artillery. Well, artillery is probably not right, but as walking tanks, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too much lore in terms of 5th edition in what we get from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, but we do get a lot if we look at the Forgotten Realms wiki, which we are not going to read by any means, but there is a lot of interesting stuff that's been put into the world through either past editions or accompanying novels and such. So we'll probably talk a little bit about it. I think it'll be interesting when we're discussing stuff like the how to use them in your game. There is very much a culture to these creatures. There's a society to them. It is very war focused. It is very aggressive, but that can be really great to use to supplement maybe your Demon Lord campaign, huh? Maybe something you want to throw in there.
Yeah, if you want to hear more about the Demon Lords, yeah, look at the top.
Yeah. And say overall, I mean, these are just terrifying creatures. So let's pull up that stat block. And what we're looking at is a large fiend, specifically a demon, and surprise, surprise, they're chaotic evil. They have a AC of 16, HP of 84, and then a speed of 60, which is twice the speed of just about anything you normally deal with. I think that is on par with a warhorse, though.
Yeah, I know horses get up around 50 or 60.
Yeah. But horses don't have tails that can slice people's heads off.
No.
With stats, we've got a strength of 21, dex of 18, con of 21, int of 8, wisdom 12, and charisma 13. All of the normal demon resistances, cold, fire, and lightning, immunity to poison, and the condition immunity of can't be poisoned as well. For senses, it has dark vision out to 120 feet, passive perception of 11, and then languages, it knows abyssal, it says abyssal telepathy 120 feet. To me, that makes it seem like that's all supposed to be one.
I think it is.
There's no comma in between. So
yeah, to me, I think that means they could use telepathy to speak abyssal into people's minds.
right. So that is probably not the type of creature you're going to be reasoning with. You're not going to be talking to them and hashing out your problems. Yeah, that's it's very telling.
Right.
Challenge rating 7, which I don't think I mentioned at the start, which is kind of a good spot in my opinion of challenge ratings. It's like if they're a lower level party, then you can usually use a challenge rating 7 to be kind of a single boss. And if your party's higher level, then hey, you can throw a couple of these in there. And this is a very fitting one to have multiple of this creature or enemy. For passive abilities, it does have magical resistance, so advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. And then all of its attacks are magical. All of its weapons, are considered magical as well. For actions, we have multi-attack. It makes 3 attacks, one with its hooves, one with its claws, and one with its serrated tail. The hooves are +8 to hit, reach of 5 feet, a single target, and do 2d6 plus 5 bludgeoning. The claws are basically the same, but do 2d4 plus 5 slashing. And then the serrated tail has a reach of 10 and does 2d10 plus 5 slashing damage. So definitely doing a good amount of damage. Comes out to an average of 38, if I've done my math correctly. Yep.
I don't know.
I just added up the little
Yeah,
numbers
20.
that it says next to
Yeah.
it. So 12
Yeah.
plus 10 plus 16. You like throw those numbers up on the screen,
Right.
mush them together. 38.
That's how addition works.
And then it also has a lightning lance ability. So this is a recharge ability, recharges on a 5 or a 6, and it of course takes up its whole action. So in this case, the Armanite looses a bolt of lightning in a line 60 feet long and 10 feet wide. Each creature in the line must make a DC 15 dex saving throw, taking 6d8 lightning damage on a failed save or half as much on a successful one.
Yeah, and that's the stat block. Is nothing too complicated or anything like that, but it's just like a good solid stat block. A good balance of being tanky with high hit points, decent AC, and then just hitting hard.
Yeah.
The lightning lance is scary. I know we fought one of these before, and every time that came back, we didn't like it because you can always manage. There always seems to be a way to be able to get at least 3 in a line.
Yeah, and even if you're getting 2
battlefield.
people in a line,
It's
and
still worth it. Yeah.
yeah, it's still definitely worth it because in that case, we're talking about 54 damage if both fail, total. If you can
Right.
get more than that in a line, then that's great. But I love when you have line abilities because everybody is constantly now thinking about their positioning. Almost more so than AoEs. With AoEs,
Right.
it's just this quick little like spread out.
No, spread
That's
out,
all.
right.
Yeah, and then that's the end of it. With a line ability, especially one that can go 60 feet long,
And 10 feet wide, yeah.
right. I mean, it's now a matter of okay, we can't stand next to each other. We can't stand in a line. We need
Yeah.
to always find a way that we can, try to at least reduce the amount of times we're able to get in that line. And what I loved
Right.
about this was the 60-foot movement speed means that it can get in the position it needs to line that
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah. And just with how geometry works, it's impossible to not have a line of 2 people.
Right.
The only thing, since it's D&D and there's cover mechanics, if there's cover on the battlefield, that could break it. But I think it'd be, with a party of 4 or 5, pretty hard to have everybody behind separate cover in a way that can't be in a line.
Yeah, but that's the type of stuff that I think makes for really clever player moves. Maybe a use of stone wall or wall of stone, to make some panels that you can now hide behind and break that line of sight.
Yeah, I like that.
Or even like the mold earth cantrip, I believe, can make like a single mound that can at least provide some cover. So I mean, those times it's actually creating like clever uses for spells and reasons to use them instead of just the the usual back and forth slash until something's dead.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where that falls apart a little bit, I think, is with the HP. 84 is just not that much for a single creature.
It is a decent amount to get through. You're right, though, for like a party of 7, if you just throw one of these at it, you're right. But I mean, by definition, that's a medium encounter.
Yeah.
No, if there's a couple of these, 84, like, it does feel like a lot. Because that's not, unless the party perfectly focus fires and you have some heavy hitters, that's not going down in 2 rounds.
Right.
It's going to be around for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And a lot of damage could be done in that time.
And I remember when I had you all fight it, and it was very much like I'll say an arena style encounter. You all were going into the basement of I think a wizard something or another. I don't even remember. It was very early in the last campaign. So actually close to 3 years ago now. But there were other demons summoned at the same time. So this is the main bad guy, but we've got minions. And you can always do that with demons. There's no question about it. If one demon summoned, have 16 more. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, this is definitely the type of thing you want. Go on, Will.
I want to kind of reinforce what you said. The weird thing about this stat block is the strength is arguably that speed. Everything else is pretty, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's pretty friggin' mediocre for the challenge rating. But 60 feet on top of that with a highly position dependent spell is, it makes it an interesting choice for the DM as to what to do, because I think there's a temptation to turn these into horse archers, which is probably a really, really fun idea, but your players are not going to like it.
Like give them a longbow?
Kind of. More like leaning into the lightning lance and then running circles around the players.
Oh, I mean, tactics. And just like when they recharge, just blast it in and run away.
Well, that's actually,
that'd be so mean.
Looking at the lore that's kind of specified, there's a couple of things that I guess aren't immediately showing in the stat block. One of those is that, yes, they do that. That's like a common thing in the war aspect, is that they will, maybe not from far back, that part's a little bit less important, but the idea of running up, striking an entire front line with lightning, and then bouncing is very much a tactic that they'll use. And if you have multiple of them, which, as we talked about with maybe a higher level party, very reasonable for them to be fighting 2, maybe 3 of these. And in that case, you've now got multiple angles of this lightning coming at you, even if they don't stay back for it, which, yes, that's optimal. But once their lightning is used, if it doesn't recharge, they can't really do anything about it. They don't need to stay back. They can stay back for the first thing. They shoot off their lightning, and then they charge in 60 feet, and they get where they need to go. And then, maybe they run away, taking an opportunity attack, waiting for that lightning to recharge once more, setting up, getting to the right position, whatever. You can get really mean with it. I think that's a great point, Will.
Yeah. I would love to see these guys have some sort of charge ability.
Yes.
Because I feel like these should be generally fought in an open area. Like if it's in a closed area, the Armanites smart enough to know to just not engage to try and get away, because like they don't have the advantage. And they're fast and they hit hard. So I some sort of charge ability, because I see playing them where like they're constantly immobile. They're running around the battlefield doing hit and runs, coming through, things like that. I'd even almost want to give them some sort of way to avoid opportunity attacks.
Yeah, I could see something that's, if they charge, usually the charge ability is if they run at you and they make a melee attack, then you get knocked prone. And
it does
great
damage.
Yeah, and it does more damage, which is a fine ability, and you could throw that on, and I think that would add something to this fight. The other thing that I would think of, though, is using what you just said, Ellie, the avoiding opportunity attack. Make it so that if they move 20 feet in their turn and make an attack with their tail, then they can not have opportunity attacks. We'll even just say they can make all of their attacks, but then they don't have opportunity attacks against them on any creature they hit. Yeah,
because as you said at the beginning, these are kind of like creatures of war.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the demon cavalry, basically. And what I'm picturing, like in a cinematic sense of how these are being used, is huge numbers that like a cavalry would. Like, goddamn, hold on. Cat keeps coming through, knocking over my lights. Everybody meet Bear.
Are we
This is who's
shaming
debating my
Bear
existence
again?
when I record. Yeah, it's Bear again. All right, it's always Bear. Nickel leaves me alone.
Any janky cuts in the episode can either be attributed to us screwing up what we were going to say or Bear.
Yep. He's cute though. He just wants to love, but it's too much.
Just like the Armanites.
Yes. He has no boundaries. Yes, Demon Cavalry. Yeah, charge it in. It's the really cool kind of cinematic setups of these guys I can't really see actually using against your party, because like you were talking about using them as kind of like lightning archers. I can see like 24 of them circling around your party in the stampede, and it's kicking up dust and they're completely blocked in there. And then just these shots of lightning coming out at random angles as they just stampede around you in a big circle. It's like, that's super cool, but like you're just going to kill your party. There's like, they can't survive that. It's a challenge rating 7. Like, I don't even know if level 20 party is going to survive 24 of these things, you know?
That's the encounter that a DM throws at their party, just hoping that they remember that they gave them an item. It's like a lightning rod.
Right.
It's like, please remember. I want you to remember that I gave you this lightning rod magic item. And the party's just like, we've got nothing that we can do against this. We're totally screwed. You
Right.
look at this DM just antagonizing us. It's like, no, please just remember I gave you a magic item for once.
Right. But that set piece thing, it could be cool to use to show your party the threat of these things,
Yes.
where they use that against an army, like an NPC army or NPC group. There's Bear again. And he also steals my train of thought every time he does it. Yeah, it's like, you set that up. It's almost more like a cinematic. And I mean, the party could try and do something if they want, but it's to showcase the threat. If you go and like, maybe there's an army of these things pushing through the land, destroying and pillaging everything as they go, and your PCs are trying to get the force together to stop it. And like early on, those tactics are shown. It's like, man, these guys are tough. They know how to use their abilities. They fight smart. This can't just be a head-on thing.
Yeah. In most cases, against an army of these creatures, which, I mean, let's just say that's a dozen of them. You're perfectly right. Using their tactics correctly, very few are going to survive a head-on encounter.
Right.
Man, I do think that would be such a cool setup, though, especially for like a higher level group, just because of spells and everything else. There's so much that I would love to see what the party does when their backs are against the wall like that. Even just kind of going back to what I said earlier, like a wall of stone. So you've got these things circling around, shooting lightning bolts, and then your party just like whoop, wall up, and then just kind of have that moment of, okay, how do we deal with this? Which I think has actually happened, not with Armanites before, but there was one time where I had, as the DM, ambushed you all at night, and I remember you just like put up wall of stone covering everybody, and there was just a moment of like, okay, what are we doing next? Because this isn't going to last forever, or I guess it could last forever, but the thing's outside, and like, what are we doing next?
That was, one of the approaches was, we're going to sit in the tiny stone coffin until the sun comes up.
Yeah.
I don't remember how we got out of that.
I don't either. That was when there was the Captain Underpants was chasing you guys.
Yep,
right.
Who we did an episode on.
Which I don't remember the actual name.
I can't. It's another demon.
Yeah.
The tracker one, yeah.
If I Google Captain Underpants D&D monster, I don't think we'll get anything.
I guess it depends how big we are to the zeitgeist. Probably not. It's probably won't, but let's do it. Captain Underpants.
Wait, while we
D&D
Google.
monster. No.
Darn. All right. Well, this podcast has been a waste.
Nope.
So, in terms of actually using these things, I mean, even outside of a tactics in combat, I think we've kind of covered that. And I probably will want to loop back around at some point to talk about other things that could be added, because I love that charge ability, and I feel like there's other things that we could do. ways that this could be used to spice up your campaign from a we'll say just a story perspective. These are definitely creatures that are driven by war. I think is like the main thing that's established, but they can be hired, they can be persuaded, they can be brought under the wing of somebody else. So while a demon fight is the first thing that I think comes to mind, there's still a lot more that can be done. These could be a hired band of demons, or I guess summoned by somebody in order to accomplish a particular goal. So just the minion tactic works perfectly fine. In terms of their own goals, you might struggle a little bit, as they don't really have much beyond just wanting to kill things and prove their strength.
Yeah. It's very warlike culture. Everything's based around that.
But there is a lot that goes on of them wanting the glory of combat. They appreciate and like the fact that they are the frontliners, and they will use that to their advantage. So I think there's a lot of ways you could use it to have basically what's the motivation for them working with your villain, whoever that may be in this scenario. Somebody who is willing to offer them that glory and saying, like, you're going to be put on the front line of my army, you're going to be my helm, and this is going to be a, I won't say glorious death. I don't think they're too keen on dying, but just being able to be of service in that way, I think is a way that can be convincing to them.
Right. And actually, I don't know if they care about dying. They're demons. If they die out of the abyss, they just pop back to the abyss.
That's true. What if they die in the abyss? I always forget what happens there.
I feel like I never got a clear answer on that.
Okay. There's a hand wave.
I know, Out of the Abyss talked about a lot, where they die out of the abyss, they just pop back, that sort of thing. But
something that could be kind of funny is that if you were on the abyss, or in the abyss for some reason, or on their plane, and you came across a group of these things, we talked a lot about Inogu, his death dells, which are just big open plains, and even running like a one shot around it, or short campaign, whatever, kind of using this in that idea. I love the concept of your party coming across a group of infighting Armanites. So you just have these, which they're very prone to fighting. If they don't have like a clear established leader or objective, then they kind of turn into just brawling with each other a lot of times. So where I joked earlier of you're probably not going to talk things out with them, this is probably one scenario where you might try talking things out with them if you come across them on the death dells, or maybe it's just a fight and you have to like fight their most powerful one to establish dominance, and then you get an army of them. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, you could definitely set up. They have intelligence of 8, so you could definitely set up scenarios where you talk with them.
Yeah, just a matter of, I mean, by default, yes, they only know Abyssal and speak telepathically. You can ignore that to some extent if you want.
Right.
Man, come on. Somebody knows Abyssal in the party. It's every time somebody knows it.
Right.
Man, you know who really you are, person who knows Abyssal.
These really were the basis for those creatures and animorphs, though, because those also spoke telepathically. Like, there has to be a connection here. Because, there's a lot of lore with Armanites. They go back pretty far. More lore than, like, I think most people really would care about, like 90% of people, but it's there. It even goes into what they normally charge for their services, starting at 100 gold pieces a day. So there's a lot of info. Whatever, we'll just make them blue.
A cool use of them, you were saying like a reason for like the villain of the campaign to have them. If it is the Demon Lord campaign, as you talked about, the Demon Lord being kind of like the ultimate boss behind the boss type thing, where it turns out the villain's like the mini boss, because they're in servitude to Baphomet, and Baphomet gifts an army of the Armanites to like the human villain or whoever it is.
Man,
and then they're causing problem with that.
Warlocks can shove their Eldritch Blast. Here's a gift of 100 Armanites.
Yeah. Yeah, and like so they go to warrior, this person like Lord of the Land declares war and everyone thinks how are they gonna manage that? And then these terrible demons show up and just destroy their opponents and start taking over the land.
Yes.
Bears back. That tail's hitting the light. There we go. Okay. Had to guide it past.
Absolutely love that idea, though.
Yeah.
That is great because then you get into the, it has levels to it where you start off, the party fights one of these creatures, and it's probably a very rough fight because with so many of these, I mean, one of these creatures, just one being sent to a village on the countryside would demolish it. You don't have, it's not like the one pre-fighter background where it's like, oh, some goblins attacked my village and I rose up and I slayed the goblins and now I'm an adventurer.
The folk hero, yeah.
Yeah. There you go. The Armanite, if they come into your village, everyone that it wants to kill is going to die.
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it. So you could have it where they're being spread across the land, just gathering. I don't know, say pillaging, gathering land, whatever you want to have them doing. It doesn't really matter. But then you do just kind of get that growing threat of fighting one versus how do we fight an army of these things, and that's
Right.
obviously not a one-on-one engagement. And if your party's fought them 3 times now, it's probably not particularly fun either. But I always love when you can kind of show how strong your party has grown. The idea of fighting one when you're all level 5, absolutely terrifying. Maybe a very tough fight. Maybe just a hard encounter. I don't know. I didn't do the math yet. But then when you're level 12, fighting 3 of them at once, you're like, okay, pretty tough fight, but we can do this. And
Right.
It's always fun to kind of show that growth.
100%, yeah. Yes, can be used to great effect in a lot of things. A lot of video games, I don't know if a lot, but some video games like to do it.
Yeah.
And like Elden Ring's been doing that, where you early on you have like, this is the boss of an area, and it's a tough fight, and you manage to get through it. And then later on, it's like that boss is now just like a random, like you keep encountering it as a random enemy out in the world or in the dungeon or whatever.
Yeah, I think FromSoft games do that quite a bit. It's
Yeah.
always fun because you just that is the feeling. Like, how will I ever get past this? Then you get past it, and then it becomes easy, and you're like, oh, how is that ever difficult?
Yeah.
So, and I think one thing that's nice too is that the tactics can change pretty drastically in terms of fighting one of them versus fighting 3. And that was mentioned with Will, you saying the idea of staying back and shooting lightning bolts. That's a very different scenario now. Maybe you do want to try and find cover or block them off and force them to come closer to you and not run away. You also have the added issue of they have advantage on all magical effects, which doesn't change tactics wise with more of them, but it does make things like hold person or hold monster, which you would need in this case, a lot more difficult to actually get off and have it be of any use.
Right.
So definitely difficult fights there. Any other thoughts on how these could be used, or do we want to talk more about things that could be added to make their stat blocks more interesting?
I'm good to move on to.
Okay. So, and one we mentioned was definitely changing up the charge ability. One other thing that is specified in the lore is that with these things being as fast as they are and as strong as they are, it is said that they can fly. Not that they actually have a fly speed, but the concept is that they can basically, taking away the magical aspect of it. I think the takeaway is that they can jump so far that they seem like they're flying for whatever length of time. And I feel like the jumping aspect is something that you could add into this as well. I know bullets have a jump ability. Theirs is just around their mass. They can jump 20 feet, and then anything within 10 feet around makes a dexterity saving throw. If they fail, they take damage and they're knocked prone.
Right.
Definitely something that I think you could take just directly from there. That idea of jumping in 60 feet instead of 20 feet, just let them have that full, well, I guess what would be their expected jump?
Running long, it equals your strength score, right? So 21 feet.
Okay, yeah. So we'll say that's doubled. They can jump 40 feet because that's their thing. They're good at jumping,
Right.
and that is a huge distance. And the look on your players' faces when they do have cover in some fashion, and it just leaps over the cover, would be priceless.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd love to see these have some sort of trample ability. I'm not sure if that exists in 5th edition D&D at all. Um, so we add the charge where you go and attack and it's knocked prone, and then something. This would be a passive feature, it's not an action, that it modifies their movement, where they're able to move over the space of a prone creature, and that's like their same size category, smaller, something like that. And in doing so, the creature needs to make a dex save, or they take X damage because they're being trampled. And so
Yeah,
that's a really cool way to handle where they charge in, they ram into somebody, knocks them prone, and they don't stop. They just keep going. And so the charge attack hits, they get knocked prone, and they just trample over them
yeah,
and
definitely
keep
like
running
that.
and just do a bunch of damage. And that's that kind of hit and run tactics. And
And
maybe as they're coming in, they swipe at somebody to the right, and then
perfect, just making that cavalry feeling even
yeah,
stronger.
yeah,
There is one, at least that I found quickly, example of a trample ability, and it's on a Triceratops. Might be on some other creatures. This is the first one that came up, but it's trampling charge. If the Triceratops moves at least 20 feet straight towards a creature, then hits it with a gore attack on the same turn, the target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. If the target's knocked prone, the Triceratops can make one stomp attack against it as a bonus action. So basically,
okay,
it charge, make an attack. If they fail a save, you can potentially get an additional attack. Um, that maybe could work
fair,
as well. The idea that if they charge and make a claw attack, if it hits, DC 15 strength saving throw, or they're knocked prone, and then they get an attack, obviously at advantage then with their hooves as a bonus action, maybe.
right,
And these are all really, I think, good abilities to consider for if it is supposed to be a boss creature, the main big bad, using those Matt Colville action-oriented monsters concept. It's basically just giving them legendary actions. This is a creature that you can definitely throw some legendary actions on, and make it feel much more terrifying. Being able to move out of combat, make extra, or not
yeah,
out of combat, out of its turn,
of its turn,
move without provoking opportunity attacks, like we discussed. Instantly recharge its lightning lance, so that way you're not waiting for it and you just say, I want the lightning lance to be used twice this encounter. Okay, on the third turn, if it's still alive, it gets its lightning lance back.
right.
So little things like that, I think, can make the combat much more difficult in a good way, up the tension.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I don't think it needs much else
No.
to like fit its challenge where it's at and to keep its like theming.
Yeah. That's
don't like the fact that it has. I think the claws are stupid. I think the claws are actually really, really, really stupid. And, like we were talking how this is very much like a cavalry unit.
mhm.
Like, can you think of a shorter range weapon than your hands?
Well, this thing is pretty big. It's large.
Yeah, but you know what it can carry with its largeness? A huge fuck off mace.
Yeah.
Well, that's one way it could be made scarier. That's for sure.
Right.
Lances, actual lances, that'd be cool, right?
Yeah, that'd be kind of terrifying. I mean,
These
there's
things- I say, yeah, these things have lances. The image of it feels weird.
like that's what you're going to rely on. That's what you're going to use. You've got
Like,
that big tail.
I don't know. Something about it just feels off. Maybe because it's so associated with like the pageantry of jousting and like the very civil thing. And I know there are uses outside of that, but that's the main place people see lances.
Yeah.
And then here's this demonic centaur.
So I think the reason why it fits well is because the point of a lance is to keep a distance between yourself and your enemy, whereas the claws, as you're saying, these things want to get up close. And, looking at its tail, for example, it's not using that as its main offensive weapon, despite the damage that it does. The point is to run up, get in the thick of things, and then anything that survived your claws and your hooves, that's getting the tail to finish off the job. And so just from that kind of visual perspective, I think a weapon, I don't know if I'd use a lance, but even, any type of sword or something could be fine. But I do think that the main point is that they're trying to get up in there, grabbing people off of their horses, throwing them to the ground, and then slicing the horse's head off. I guess that wouldn't even be necessary if the rider's done, but the brutality of it seems fitting.
Right. Yeah, them relying on their claws, their own hands seems to be pointing to their kind of like warmongering, barbaric nature, where they want to get their hands dirty.
But
quite literally.
Yeah, but that said, I do think that there's a argument to be made that the claws, if they are supposed to be used in that way, are a little bit underwhelming. I mean, 2d4 plus 5 slashing damage compared to the 2d10 plus 5 tail. It's like, well, what if could always be changed around, if you wanted to make things more difficult, or just, only wanted to add a thing. I wouldn't do everything that we've discussed. Take your favorite. Right. Add a grapple ability where if they hit with the claws, they're able to grab onto somebody. And that's very terrifying if you're a PC, because they can grab you with their claws and then run away to where they now have you separated and can devour you, I guess, destroy you, whatever, in their own time, in their own way. They're not going to eat you. That's not specified anywhere. They might eat you, but that's not the point.
They got fangs. Scary sharp teeth. But either way, I think raw they would have half movement. I don't, unless the one size category above gets rid of that, but I think it needs to be 2 size categories above.
I think you're right.
I think you're dragging them officially.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's
that's another way. Yeah, the passive thing of if when grappling a creature that's medium or smaller, they do not lose any of their movement, and then give them a grapple ability.
Yeah. So I mean, that would just be that alone could totally change up the combat, because now you have to worry about being singled out. So they run in, they grab the wizard and move them 60 feet away. Sure, they might be able to Misty Step next turn, but they can just do it again. They can just run up and grab them again and keep on singling out who they want to. Like, even then, they could just line up the lightning lance and just say, oh, I want to get 3 people. Let me scoop one up, make a line of 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Would that make the claws more scary to you, Will? Would that make it feel better?
No, because it could still do that if it had a huge fuck off mace.
Yeah, but it wouldn't enjoy it as much.
It'd enjoy it more. It has this huge hammer that it just like shoulders, and it grabs you up and it sprints off, and then it bonks you with the hammer, and then there's just so much fun there.
I like how it started almost like so brutal, and then just turned into like
bonks.
Like, yeah.
It's just setting you back down and then bonking you.
Yeah.
It just gets driven into the ground like a cartoon.
All right, a counterpoint to that. I know this type of stuff is usually not considered or talked about with monsters in D&D. Like, they have the equipment that they have. But since these things are often like the shock troops and like the cavalry and part of like the army, demon armies, or like a villain's army and stuff like that, if they all have maces, like those needed to be supplied. These, I think, from a kind of role-playing logistics standpoint, I think one of the strengths of the Armanite is like it's good as it is. Its own biology is enough to be devastating and terrifying.
Yeah,
it does not need to be supplied. It is not hindered if it loses a weapon.
Yeah, it is a siege weapon. That's the key. No, I think that's a great point, and I think that's not so much the equipping them aspect, but that is sort of alluded to where they just, I don't know, they exist, and that is their anatomy. They don't need anything more.
This is, I mean, we are taking a bit of an exception and pulling deep from Forgotten Realms wiki for this episode.
No, that one
But-
I was actually just going off of the basics. Unless you were going to add.
No,
one,
what I'm going to say is like
Go for it.
they're weak and they're injured. They become blacksmiths. That's like the lower status of caste.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That is interesting.
There was actually a really cool point in that in the wiki from the ancient lore that was written when we were 6 years old. That like that was one of the things that they became like these crazy good blacksmiths, but they were never really that important. And sometimes they became so good a demon lord would come and sweep them up, and then all the rest of the dudes would be like, "Shit, where are we going to get our maces from now?"
That is interesting then. So, I mean, that could probably be argued to say like, oh yeah, that's the armor that they make for themselves. But this.
Yeah, I mean,
I
the
don't know.
image has barding. The lore talks about their barding, but in their stat blocks is natural armor. It's a little weird, but
It does, yeah. It specifically says natural armor. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, there's one way to make these even more intense. In talking about the idea of a bigger challenge later on. Yeah, the first one you fight doesn't have armor. The third one you fight, yeah, they've got plate armor and they've got a mace.
right. Yeah, that's
Oh.
a good way to distinguish like the generals, the tougher ones.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Well, what was the exact term you used? You said a big fuck off mace.
Big fuck off mace.
Yeah. Okay. Got to earn that explicit rating.
Yes.
No, that's a great idea, though. That's a good point. Way to distinguish them. And I think that it is fair to say that they would have distinguished, say, caste in their own armies. So fantastic way to do it, and would make for an even scarier fight. Because if instead of the claws, it was doing, 2d12 from a maul, yeah, that's getting very scary.
Yeah.
I would also make
2d12
it
plus
huge.
5.
That one, the boss one, jet black plate mail, 2 huge fuck off maces, and it's
20 feet
20
tall.
feet tall. Yeah,
I love it.
Why not? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a demon, right? Like,
yeah.
Double all the damage dice.
And then on the flip side, you can also make baby ones. I want to see little Armanites that are size category small. And okay, maybe don't do that.
Ultra small ones that are the size of a rabbit. But they still have the lightning lance ability.
That would be
But
great.
But it just does like 2d8 damage, so it's not as bad. It's little zappers. Yeah, it's almost kind of surprising. I didn't come across anything that explained why they get lightning lance. Don't know if anyone else did.
I didn't see anything. Just
Okay, that's
it's
fine. They don't need
it's
to
the
have
demon
a reason.
thing. Why they're just like they get lightning or fire or something.
Okay, that's fine. I don't need it to be more than that. If you want to think of a reason, fine. They were blessed by Thor or something. It doesn't matter.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's a tie into like some ancient mythology or something.
Yeah, I'll have to
like the closest thing I could get to is these things have a bit of like a Greek mythology vibe to them to me, and then you have Zeus and his lightning. Then it's a stretch.
Nope, good enough for me. Honestly, I'm sure somebody was just sitting in a room talking about these creatures, coming up with the concept, and somebody else walked in and said, "You should give it lightning." And they were like, "What?" And it was that dude's boss, so he just had to do it, and
Right.
it stuck.
And it's been that way forever.
I'm okay with it.
This I'm going to keep this brief, but in the fantasy world, there's just so much like everybody steals everybody's ideas, and Warhammer
Right.
is probably the absolute worst at this. And Warhammer has like an enemy that's essentially this in every way, called a dragon ogre, and they gave it the lightning abilities and stuff like that, and then just explain that they bathe in lightning.
Okay. So what
Or
you're
just,
saying
like,
is that it's just
they got a big axe though, or a big fuck off mace.
Yeah, because
But
they're
other than
way
that,
cooler.
They're also lizards. Either way.
But yeah, there's a lightning evil centaur that works for demons in the Warhammer lore. They get lightning powers by bathing in lightning. So let's just say these guys get that for bathing in
What
lightning.
does bathing in lightning mean?
I don't know.
What do you mean? What does it mean? You just have big lightning baths.
Just like
Turn on the
pools of
lightning
lightning.
Yeah, I think that's their way of saying that they just bathe in the rain, and they want to sound really cool about it. It's like, oh yeah, every time there's a lightning storm, we go out and bathe in the lightning. It's like, no, you're just taking a bath. You've got scented soaps. It's not, it's not how that works.
Right.
And as long as they're using soaps from the Crafty Gamer, I am so down with it. And you can get scented soaps from the Crafty Gamer using the code MM10 to save 10% off your order as you bathe in the lightning. They also have...
That was a solid statement.
They also have different candles, t-shirts, and other TTRPG themed things. I think I do love the soaps they have are shaped like dice, which I wish I had one right now to show, but they also have different themes to the scents. So there's like barbarian soaps. So, you can smell like a barbarian.
It smells nicer than you think.
It's all
a
that
warm
sweat.
comfort to the strength.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else we want to talk about with this episode?
No.
Okay. As usual, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Give us your thoughts, ways that you'd use the Armanite, if you'd ever used one in combat before, how the combat went, strategies you used, strategies you wish you used, whatever. Always happy to talk about it. And thank you as always to our patrons, Ed G, Muddlewaite, Brian H, Craig A, Isaac M, Jeff W, Luca L, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Sentinel D20, Adam A, and Rob K. You all rock. Go bathe in lightning, you warriors. God, I hate that. Don't make... I'm so mad, Ellie, that you made me think about that further than just, they bathe in lightning. Right. Like, I literally had, like, these big baths, like the Spirited Away bathhouse baths, just, like, filled with lightning, and that entirely clicked in my head. It's like, yes, that makes sense. And the second you're like, how do you bathe in lightning? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's dumb. Oh, well.
Yeah, and it's probably best not to tell people to go bathe in lightning. They're not going to get lightning powers. They're just going to
But they could.
Okay. Guess you're a scientist now.
Anyways, thanks for watching.